Moments after Huw Edwards was named as the presenter at the centre of a sex scandal storm at the Beeb, Director General Tim Davie sent a message to BBC staff saying, "This will no doubt be a difficult time for many after a challenging few days. I want to reassure you that our immediate concern is our duty of care to all involved. This remains a very complex set of circumstances. As we've done throughout, our aim must be to navigate through this with care and consideration in line with BBC values." Earlier today, it was announced that Davie will be questioned in Parliament alongside acting chairwoman Dame Ellen Closs-Stevens and Policy Director Claire Sumner on the BBC's handling of the scandal. Huw's wife, Vicky Flind, confirmed yesterday that Huw was only made aware of the allegations on Thursday of last week and that the presenter is now in hospital after suffering from severe mental health issues. Tom Bauer, what a story. A crisis of the BBC's making, and you're concerned that the BBC seems to be following the Sun's approach to this story, potentially the Sun's agenda.
Absolutely, because I think what went wrong was, as we were discussing on Tuesday, that Tim Davie, a Coca-Cola salesman, is actually the editor-in-chief of the BBC. He is the man in charge of its broadcast. And he completely failed to understand the ramifications of the BBC adopting the Sun's allegations that what Huw Edwards had done was illegal. Now the Sun today is saying it doesn't matter if it's illegal or not, but that is not what they said on Saturday and on Monday. And the BBC, instead of saying we're standing back from the Sun's agenda, we know Huw Edwards, we're going to talk to him, we're going to work it out, they just followed the agenda because they're wokes. They joined the lynch mob. And what really makes me so annoyed about all this is it just reveals all the fundamental weaknesses of the BBC, which are a very inadequate Director General, a very, very weak Board of Management, a now acting chairwoman who actually knows nothing about broadcasting whatsoever, a Board of Governors who are completely inane because they know nothing about journalism and real broadcasting. And the BBC is hitting the rocks. They don't realise it. And people have lost trust in the BBC. And that is what they've achieved over these last days, because they have pursued Huw Edwards in a way, especially on last night's Newsnight, where they adopted all of the Sun's agenda. But worse than that, they put up Alan Yentob as the man to answer on behalf of the BBC. And he just sat there quietly, like a wallpaper, because he had nothing to say. Alan Yentob doesn't understand news. He doesn't understand current affairs. He doesn't really understand politics. He's a celebrity filmmaker. And that's the real problem. The BBC looks as if nobody's in charge, because nobody is in charge. And so we've got this terrible feeling at the moment of the Puritans in the BBC now digging more and more into what Huw Edwards might have done. But the thing is, it was all legal. The police have said they haven't discovered any illegality. This is a man who admitted he was very depressed. Did the BBC come and help him? No, they didn't. They abandoned him. When it was clear what he had allegedly done...
Do we know that they abandoned him?
Well, we do know, because they should have then helped him. But he was abandoned. His wife said no one called to say he's depressed. But the key thing is we still don't know the evidence that the Sun had. But worse than that, the BBC has now come out with allegations that why don't they show the evidence? They've got their own stories. They could redact.
The Sun say they've handed over all their evidence to the Beeb.
And they haven't got any. They haven't got anything more.
So you don't think that there are bank statements that illustrate and demonstrate that £35,000
I'm told the Sun never got from the mother the bank statements.
I see.
They just repeated what she told them.
They took her word for it.
Exactly. And that's why they never named Huw Edwards, because for libel reasons. But I think now they've got a libel problem. But what was, I think, critical as well in all this, that Tim Davie gave a rather inane, rather unconvincing statement yesterday. The Sun people haven't talked whatsoever, having destroyed Huw Edwards' life and career. Was there public interest in doing it? That, I think, is debatable. And now the BBC staff somehow going out of control, chasing a Puritan agenda, chasing like a lynch mob Huw Edwards. Why? And not producing evidence.
Aren't the BBC trying to demonstrate that they want to mark their own homework properly, that it's the opposite of a cover-up, that if there's a suggestion that a BBC star has behaved improperly, they will report it? You know, it's the opposite of Watergate. It's all out in the open. They're effectively self-flagellating. And what about the fact that these allegations still stand? Surely any one of them would get Huw Edwards sacked. The allegation that he broke lockdown rules. Kay Burley from Sky, she was suspended for 9 months for doing exactly that.
Well, you're right, but we haven't seen the evidence. That is the point. It is all the time allegations.
Well, the BBC say that they have confirmed that they've verified a text message exchange between Edwards and one of the alleged victims, and that it was essentially the person at the heart of that. The alleged victim felt afraid, and they sensed the power of this celebrity.
Well, you know, there's a very simple way of communicating this on television. You redact the identity of the recipient of this alleged man and show the text. Let the public decide. Why haven't they done that? It's easy to redact it. Let us see what, in fact, Huw Edwards did. And the fact that they don't show the evidence leads one to suspect all the time that this is a witch hunt or appallingly poor journalism, bad leadership by Davey, editor-in-chief, not saying to the Newsnight and all the other people, I just don't like the way you're doing it. And the reason that Tim Davey doesn't issue an order is because he doesn't know how to make programmes. He's not a journalist. He doesn't know how to present these stories. So, in fact, these people are acting as agents of their own wokeism.
How does this play out? Does Huw Edwards get back on TV and does he sue a bunch of people?
Well, he doesn't get back on TV ever. That's the end of his career. And then I think, I'm not a great fan of Huw Edwards. I'm one of the few people who would have watched Alistair Bruce on Sky during the coronation, who was infinitely better than Huw Edwards. I don't think he was a particularly convincing news anchor, but you know that he's a human being. He was trusted by the BBC. He was trusted by the editor-in-chief, who didn't bother to call him. And I think Huw Edwards' fate now is a side issue, unfortunately.
Well, why won't he appear on telly if he's so innocent as you
Because
suggest?
I think he's too discredited. I think that no one will believe him when he reads the news. That's the whole point, the credibility. And to that extent, was there public interest in destroying his credibility? Yeah. I think we're going to have to see, because that all depends on the evidence which is produced.
What's he going to do? I mean, if he leaves the BBC, I mean, I have to work for LBC or something.
He might have to come and work here.
Well,
but
I mean, tell you it's a full roster.
Full roster. But the point is more than that, you know. In the end, what we're talking about is the biggest news corporation in the world. We're talking about the BBC, which when I was there was the gold standard of terrific broadcasting.
Yeah.
Now reduced to really a hovel, a pitiful corporation, a shell of a broadcaster, constantly losing audience, constantly losing money. And that is, in the end, the responsibility of Tim Davey and all the people around him, who, all of them, are too scared to come out and explain why they behaved the way they did.
Tom, you're going to have to get off that fence, honestly. It's just, this prevarication is irritating. OK, so you don't think he gets back on TV. You think the BBC is pretty sort of damaged by this. What about The Sun? What next for them?
Well, can I just tell you, I'm not on the fence of the BBC, because I spent 26 years there in its greatest years and saw its destruction, and it was very sad to watch that happen. As far as The Sun is concerned, I think that they haven't proved why they launched such a huge attack last Saturday, because in the end they didn't get the boy, the man involved with Huw Edwards on side. That is why they played it the way they did. And to that extent, to launch an attack to destroy a man without having all the evidence which you could go to court with, I think raises questions about the Sun's credibility as well.
Tom, brilliant to have you on the show. Thank you for joining us. It was been a fascinating couple of conversations over the last few days.